This is Talking Drupal, a weekly chat about web design and development from a group of guys with one thing in common. We love Drupal. This is episode 272, a GitLab update. Hey, welcome to Talking Drupal. This is in episode 223, back in August of 2019, Tim Lehnen from the Drupal Association joined us to talk about Drupal.org's move to GitLab. A year later, year and a half later we are right now, right? Tim joins us again to refresh us on the status of that project. Welcome, Tim.
Hey, thanks for having me. Wonderful to be here again.
Well, Tim is the CTO of the Drupal Association. He leads the team that builds the tools that help you all in the community to build Drupal. More recently, the DA engineering team is beginning an initiative to guide new organizations to becoming contributors. We're interested to hear more what that's about, Tim. So thanks for joining us again.
Yeah, thanks again.
And also with us again this week is Nick Laughlin from Enlightened Development. What's up, Nick?
Good afternoon. Not too much. Just thinking of before the show, we were putting in some things that we're thankful for. One of the things I'm thankful for is, I'm not sure if I've mentioned this on the show before, but my wife likes to sew. In fact, the last few Christmases, her gifts have all been sewing related, a serger, embroidery machine, things like that. And throughout the last few months, she's been sewing new and different kinds of face masks. And
that's awesome.
She just got this new one that it's so comfortable, but it's, I think it's almost N95 level protection because it's triple ply cloth and it's got a N95 filter in the middle.
And you soaked it in Clorox bleach.
No. But it also has these loops that go over your head instead of over your ears. So it's so much more comfortable. The only thing that it doesn't have that true N95 masks have is like the glue that glues it to your face. But I have a beard, so the glue wouldn't work anyway. I'm just thankful that she just keeps like making new, like every month or two, she's like, here, I have a new prototype. Try this.
So Nick, are these available on Etsy somewhere or something?
Not on Etsy, but she has been talking to me the last couple of days about how to put them together and maybe sell them. So
I have a suggestion for you. So my daughter is making these things that you can like attach to your mask. So you can take your mask off and let it hang in your chest and pull it back up for people who are in an office. And she's been selling them like crazy on like the local Facebook group for the area. So that might be an avenue to go.
Yeah.
Become an Amazon seller.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be interested in seeing that design. Because those are probably, those sound like they're probably easier to make in masks than masks too. These masks are fairly involved. Oh, they also
especially when you're calling them N95.
Yeah. They're not
Gucci quality.
We're not going to. If she sells them, she's not selling them at that level. I'm just saying the filter is like it's supposed to be like an N95 filter.
You can sell them on Etsy. You could call them N95-ish masks.
No. But one of the other really cool features that I missed is there's like a little pocket at the top of the nose that your glasses fit into, which keeps your glasses from fogging up.
Nice.
So they're really, really nice masks. Like I said, if you're going somewhere like on a plane or something, you want true N95 or KN95s, but for day-to-day stuff, these are really good.
As everyone on this call is clearly wearing glasses, have you guys figured out the over the ear over the glasses trick to make sure? I don't know about you, but my glasses tend to slip off if my mask things are underneath my glasses. So I don't know if you guys have done the over the ears over the glasses thing to kind of keep your glasses in place, but. It's my pro tip.
Seems like a good idea. I did see a GIF the other day of someone who made, who sewed buttons onto their masks straps with loops so that the mask could just be attached to the to the arms of your glasses instead of on your
Interesting.
ears. Which is pretty clever
Interesting.
too.
So
And
Nick,
I never thought I'd be sharing mask tips.
so I'm officially putting my order in, Nick, for 2 of those if I have some way to order them in the future.
Right. I'll let Joanna
Okay.
know that I'm already selling for her.
Okay, good. And Nick did mention that things we're thankful for. So as we're recording this in the US, we're 2 days away from Thanksgiving. So sort of our update theme here is, what are you thankful for? So John, what are you thankful for?
Man, I'm thankful for so much. Obviously good health, knock on wood, this year has been a plus. My family and friends have been super supportive, and it's just a new world for everybody. I think looking at this year, there you kind of pick out that there's so much to be thankful for. It's hard to pick one thing. I look at people who, unfortunately, we're not in a scenario where they could work at home. They have, jobs where they actually have to do things and make stuff. And it's hard to do that at home. And having a job where I can work from home, and a community like the Drupal community behind a product that's, I'm sure there are people out there that have been impacted by this, but, having that community of people and events to keep in contact and stuff like that. The team at Oomph, I mean, I could go on forever about things that I'm thankful for. I mean, I think it's hard to pick one thing, especially this year, where it's been kind of really put into perspective. Steven, what's going on with you? I see you have your Christmas tree in the background there. If you're watching the video.
Yeah, so my Christmas tree is up. It's not decorated yet, and we've never put it up before Thanksgiving, but this feels like the year that, like, you need to get that feeling.
I'm still holding out.
Earlier.
I'm still Sunday. Yeah. Sunday we'll put up Christmas decorations, but I'm holding out.
It's funny. Before we get to Tim's update, they don't have Thanksgiving in Colombia. So in Colombia, Christmas starts the day after Halloween.
Oh, that's interesting.
Oh my god.
So it's
and
been
Nick, Nick, the reason you bring that up about Colombia is
my wife is Colombian.
Thank you. Okay.
So we agreed that it wouldn't happen until after Thanksgiving, after some long discussions. So that means the second Thanksgiving is over, Christmas trees go up. Yeah. And then the compromise on my side is that they keep the tree up until Three Kings Day, which is, I think, January 6th. Because it used to be when I did a tree by myself, I'd put it up maybe the week before Christmas and take it down the second Christmas was over. So now I get 6 weeks. Not 12 weeks.
we keep our indoor Christmas tree until possibly February in some cases.
Oh, wow.
The outdoor Christmas tree until February, definitely. So it all depends on how dry it gets, how much it starts shedding, really.
Right.
So I'm sorry, Steven, I distracted you from what you're thankful for.
No, that's fine. No. And speaking of like the Christmas tree being up early for us, my wife, probably about a month ago, I got in her car and there was Christmas music on. But this leads me to what I'm thankful for. And I brought this up many times over the last like 4 or 5 months. So my wife is a school teacher, and with coronavirus, you hear in every state, we need to keep the kids in school. It's all about keeping the kids educated. And I'm partly fully supportive that kids will learn better in the classroom. There's no doubt about that with a wife as a teacher, but there are challenges now. And I can tell you now that there's a lot of things to be thankful for, but I am so thankful for the teachers that are in those classrooms, because they're not the ones that are ever considered with everything that's going on. So
you're here.
I thank my wife, and I thank all those teachers who are out there doing what they can. And it's no pleasure for them coming home and being remote either. It's significantly more work. So, and kind of related to that is, it's a technology thing, but man, Zoom has gone from being this tool to being like a word like Kleenex.
Essential.
Yeah, they're like Kleenex is a word that you use. Hey, I want a Kleenex, and it means any brand. Like Zoom is the word you use now to communicate with people online. It really has been an amazing product in these last 6 months. So I'm thankful.
We should have bought stock.
Yeah, exactly. No question about it. Really.
Listen, that's a really big curve there. You would have been like, I'm gonna retire to a private island.
No kidding. There's a way to fund the Drupal project, but oh well, so it goes.
Yeah, so thankful to not any of those products, but Zoom kind of really stepped up here and giving free service to teachers at the beginning of this thing, and free accounts was pretty amazing.
I also think, speaking of Zoom right now, I think that they are waiving their 40-minute limit for Thanksgiving so that people can do Zoom Thanksgivings without having to restart their meeting every 40 minutes. So, you know, it may be some sort of marketing technique, but you know, I appreciate that. I can get behind that.
So Tim, what are you thankful for now?
Well, there's a lot, and I echo a lot of what you all said about being thankful for my health. For the most part, my family and friends have all done well. I have had a couple friends who've come down with COVID and fortunately pulled through. But you know, for the most part, the people I know have been doing well. My wife is also in education. She's a reading tutor, particularly for kids with learning disabilities, and she's managed to make that transition to doing remote, and has actually been able to bring in more clients than she had been able to before, which has been a surprising but fortunate turn of events for our family. But you know, I also am super thankful for the team at the Drupal Association. So, and not just the engineering team, the whole team over there. There's 16 of us. We're sort of a tight-knit family of people who support the community and have that community spirit. And in a year that has been as bizarre as this one, where there's so much stress going on in people's lives, and the lines between what is in your work life and your personal life get blurred, it's so helpful to have a kind of team that is willing to support you on the personal level and not just on the professional level, right? And that team over at the DA has been really, really good about that. And I'm just, you know, so thankful to be a part of that with all of them. I'm also massively thankful to the Drupal community at large. At the beginning, well, sort of midway through the year, we ran the Drupal Cares campaign because we needed funding to support the fact that we couldn't hold an in-person DrupalCon, which is our, you know, normally our major funding source. And the community came out of the woodwork. They stepped up to support us and help us out. And they met our fundraising goal in half the time that we had allocated for the campaign. And it's just made it possible for the DA to keep doing what we do and to keep focusing on important projects like some of the ones we're going to talk about today, and kind of keep supporting the Drupal community at large. So it was a bit of a scary and an uncertain time, but thanks to that support, I think we've been able to support each other and everybody doing Drupal projects from home. So really thankful for all of that.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It was quite a campaign. All of us were happy to be involved with it and promote it. And it will be interesting what carries over from that into 2021, right? I know personally, I increased my annual give significantly. So I'm wondering how many people will continue that the next year, which would be fantastic.
It was awesome because we saw not only one-time donations, but we also saw a big uptick in Drupal Association memberships, and also a big uptick in people increasing their member level. So it was really great, and we thank all of you out there who did that.
Yeah, that's what.
Go ahead, Nick. Yep. Sorry,
one of the things that I learned a long time ago from nonprofits, you know, and this is important for people listening, is a single donation is sometimes good, especially in a case like this, where there's a significant need and a specific ask. But nonprofits operate on annual revenue too. So having, you know, if your choice sometimes is between giving $100 once or $10 a month, sometimes the $10 a month is better because they can look at that and say, okay, we can forecast that we know we're getting this much each month for the next 12 months or 2 years or something. So they can have longer term planning, you know, whereas Drupal Cares covered, you know, a gap. The increase in memberships and things can help them plan things for the future.
exactly.
And maybe with the new administration, we'll actually get our deduction back for for
Would
charitable
be great.
donations.
Sure
Start
would be
making
nice.
more of those and feel like you're getting something when you're given something there.
Absolutely.
I also think that it gave the Drupal Association an opportunity to create awareness of what the organization does, and maybe it's more top of mind for people moving forward. So that's great. So let's move on to our primary topic of the day, which we're talking about the GitLab updates primarily, and then any other thing that Tim is interested in talking about. So how about if we start with you were back on the show a year and a half ago with sort of the introduction of this project. How about if we just what is this project about? Let's start there for anyone who's not aware of what's happening.
Yeah, so this goes back a long time, and I'll probably be retreading some ground from that call a year and a half ago, but I think that's good. We Drupal.org has been around supporting the Drupal project for, well, let's put it this way, it predates Git. So the first iteration of Drupal.org was using CVS version control. Everything was patch-based. There was no GitHub, there was no GitLab, there was no Bitbucket, none of these other tooling options. And obviously, as time went on, we tried to evolve and follow those trends. So when Git became a thing, there was still no GitHub, at least right off the bat. So we had built an integration using a custom Git twisted daemon written in Python, and that was running the Git backend until this GitLab transition, basically. And so for years in the community, there's been this discussion of, well, should we move to something like GitHub for everything we do? But wait, we'd lose these all this metadata and all this Drupal specific way of working, and we'd get forks of forks and forks instead of it all being in this one place on D.O. And there was all these concerns. And then over the years, new tooling options appeared, and there started being competition in the space. So as soon as Bitbucket and GitLab were also on the scene, they started competing feature-wise, and they started creating some integration possibilities that weren't there before, that made it possible for us to consider using them and upgrade our tooling. So literally until just a few weeks ago, the primary contribution method on Drupal.org was still patches. It was still a patch-based workflow. You would generate a patch from the command line. You'd work in the issue queues on Drupal.org and upload your patch. We did have automated CI testing and some other modern features like that, but you still had to be used to that. And I've certainly talked to developers who were not just beginning their career at this point, but who were 5 years plus into their career, who'd never worked in a patch workflow. Like their first code boot camp was on GitHub with pull requests. And so, it made contributing to the community harder than it needed to be, right? And it made participating in Drupal contribution harder than it needed to be. So the goal was to modernize our tool set by providing the kind of pull request, they're just called merge requests in GitLab, that people expect if they're used to GitHub or any other tools that they work with. But in addition to that, find ways to integrate it into Drupal.org to keep some of the things that we do well, that I think we actually do better than just vanilla GitHub or GitLab by itself. So that's kind of the direction we were going.
So Tim, I want to point out to listeners that the scope of something like this, how big it is. So am I clear that Drupal is one of the largest open source contributed projects?
Yes, we are one of the largest, one of the most active to this day. We've also been around some of the longest, except for possibly some of the Linux distributions, right? Drupal is going to be 20 years old next year. We have that entire history going back. It'll be 9 major versions going on 10 effectively. And when we talk about the Drupal project, when you think about it from a Git repository perspective, it's really not a single project, right? We have all of our contribute ecosystem of modules, themes, and distributions. And so there are actually close to 40,000 repositories on Drupal.org. So we're not talking about migrating one repo.
Right.
We're talking about migrating a whole ecosystem of modules built around Drupal and all of the maintainership rules about who the current maintainers
Yeah.
are and the access control and doing all of this without missing a release, right? We have
Right.
6 months Drupal core releases that are happening, right? 9.1 is coming out like next
Right.
week
Right.
or the week after. And we needed to make sure we didn't disrupt any of that. So yeah, the scale was intense. And that dictated a lot of how we sort of went about the migration process here. We focused on a phased process where we first just transparently replaced all the repository stuff with GitLab repositories. So it was still patch workflow. Everything you saw on Drupal.org looked the same. It's just that the underlying hosting was changed, and then we just turned on feature by feature to add those modern tools until we got to where we are today.
So a couple of weeks ago, we added a new set of features. We'll talk about those in a minute. But what you talked about a phased approach. What phase of the project are we at right now? Are we like close to the end, or is it done with this last feature release, or is it how much further do you think it's going to go?
It's a good question. So I would say we're both done and not done. So I would say we're done with what was our most ambitious initial goal, the one that, again, dates back to years of conversation in the community about what the tools around Drupal should be. That initial goal, I think, is done. However, we sort of launch into a new project and a new set of objectives, knowing that because we have now moved to a tooling setup based on GitLab that is itself constantly being updated, they do monthly feature releases, we can continue to take advantage of their innovation and their new features and their new collaboration tools to keep the Drupal community moving forward. So hopefully, unlike in the past, where it's like we do this major effort to switch from CVS to Git, and then this major effort to switch from the Git twisted daemon to GitLab, and then have years in between where things are too static, hopefully this will be continuous improvement and keep the tools modern as they evolve.
So it's almost like you guys have upgraded to Drupal 8, and now the upgrade path to Drupal 9, 10, 11, and 12 is going to be
Exactly.
so much easier.
Perfect metaphor. Yes, that is honestly very much kind of the idea. And from the DA's point of view, we're also very seriously thinking about like what's maintainable for us with the team size we have. Again, it's a team of 4 engineers, including myself, on the Drupal Association engineering team supporting this project. So there's so much that we do that's not just the tooling. And so if we want to be able to keep up with whatever the new CI pipeline or code review tool or whatever new innovation happens, we need to be able to leverage the fact that, hey, there's a multi-million-dollar company behind GitLab making these features. We can use those. We don't have to rebuild them ourselves. So
now that we're on GitLab, you and the team have much more time to, I'm sure, put your feet up and just relax, right?
Oh yeah, no, it's we're pretty much all lazy vacation from here, just all playing hooky. No, as you can imagine, nonprofit life and open source life, we've got a backlog, that's we've been working through. Honestly, there are still some items in our backlog from when I started 6 years ago that we'd known about even then. But the advantage, what's changed is the energy that we put into these projects can now be focused on things that make a unique impact for the Drupal community, right? Like, so we're not spending engineering cycles reproducing something that we could have taken off the shelf. If we're spending those engineering cycles, we're doing something that uniquely supports Drupal and the Drupal community, whether that's refinements to the test system so that we can guarantee PHP 8 support in Drupal 9.2 and beyond, or whatever the case may be. We can now be more targeted on impactful change instead of just playing catch up to the ecosystem around us.
So there's been some recent rather large developments. Can you talk a little bit about those? I've seen the new buttons on the issue pages.
Yep. Yeah. So hey, everybody out there who's been asking for pull requests, they're here, right? GitLab calls a merge request, but they're here.
It's an early Christmas present.
Yeah, absolutely. It's your Christmas present, your Diwali present, your Hanukkah present. It is all everything bundled up into one because it's such a big deal. And I'm really proud of how we did it and how this integration works. So let me step into that a little bit. So you still use a Drupal.org issue for organizing the conversation, the proposed solution, and getting the collaborators together on an issue. We did a little research going into this, and we found that there was an average of 5 people collaborating on an issue on a Drupal.org hosted issue, which is actually really, really high when you consider that as an average, especially compared to other open source stuff. So we knew when we were going to create these merge requests that we would need a workflow, right? If you're used to this on GitHub, the way you do this is you fork your project into your own namespace, you do a bunch of code in that silo, then you open a merge request back, you have a review thread on the merge request, and then hopefully it's accepted and back in. And you know, you can be coordinating maybe in an issue on the original project, or sometimes maybe you're not. You also, if you're that pull request creator, you're responsible. If someone else comes along, you either have to grant them explicit access to make changes, or they have to make a fork of your fork and to submit changes back, and you get these weird chains of dependencies. So we knew that we would need a forked workspace for people to collaborate on, but we wanted it to be one where we had that natural collaboration of all the normal contributors by default, without any extra, permissions management. So when you're in a Drupal.org issue, there's just a big green button that creates what we're calling an issue fork, which is just a single fork of the code base. And if you need another one because you're proposing a radically different solution, you have that option. But it's a single fork of the code base with a branch named based on the issue that everybody who goes to that issue can access and collaborate on by default. So it's collaborative by default in a way that default tools at GitHub and GitLab still aren't as good as they are. They don't quite have this sort of single-threaded conversation. And then you can open a merge request just in the same way that you would normally do if you're used to using GitHub or GitLab or any of those tools. You can open a merge request and all of the details get posted back into the original D.O issue. You see the code review comments, you see the changes and commits on the merge request, you see the testing status, just like we had on patches, and all of those things. And finally, if you're the maintainer, at the bottom of an issue, we've built a merge button that uses the GitLab API and takes the default commit message that's generated on every Drupal.org issue with all the credit of who's been contributing and all those things, takes that, does the merge commit using all that detail for you. So it actually simplifies some of the steps in the merge process and is really, really easy to just dive in and get working on.
And this is available in all projects now, right?
Yes, so we had a beta process that went from actually from DrupalCon Global, our sort of virtual version of DrupalCon. We opened a beta, we invited people to nominate their projects to use it out to start. And we had people nominate core issues to test it out. So that was really good because we got some feedback on usability, we got people testing out, but for the most part, we just saw that people were really liking it and really enjoying it. So we finished off some integration, and then we talked to the core maintainers and said, okay, we want to coordinate with you on the actual launch date so that, again, we don't suddenly disrupt the core issue management process in the middle of a release cycle or something like that. But yeah, so as of a few weeks ago, we flipped the switch, and it's now any issue in any project on Drupal.org can have an issue fork and can have these merge requests.
Can we add or Tim, if you have one off the top of your head, but I'm just interested. I looked at a couple of projects. I looked at Drupal core. I was just looking for an example of someone that actually kind of did this process and what it looked like when you were on the issue. So maybe we can just drop a link to that in the show notes for people that are interested in seeing that.
Absolutely. I'll grab one or two that we can put in the show notes. And also I'll just shout out A recent core feature that made it into 9.1 was an issue that was worked on in this process during the beta. So that was the core feature to add the lazy loading attribute to all images by default in Drupal.
Cool.
So that core issue was done using this new
Oh, nice.
process. So
So I don't have to have that template anymore.
no, there's a lot of stuff that you can do. So, and I think it's interesting because this has only been open for a couple of weeks, right? But there are currently more than 600 open, or 600 total merge requests that are
Wow.
either open or have been
wow.
open, and about 300 that have already been closed and merged.
Clearly,
Oh, wow.
adoption is awful, right?
Yeah. So obviously we haven't been able to get the word out enough, but no, I mean, it's great because we're really seeing a lot of people diving into this. And I should shout out the volunteer mentors, the official mentorship team, and also just the larger unofficial group that also participates. You've probably met someone in that group before at a Drupalcon in the contribution room, or at a Drupal camp they often go to. So as soon as this was available, they were like, oh gosh, we have Drupal NYC camp next week, and we have this and that, and they immediately picked up and started learning the new process and helping get the word out and teaching new contributors how to use it.
So,
Hey, Tim, it would be interesting to see, I don't know if you have metrics for this over the next year, how many first-time contributors have joined based on these changes versus the past years.
Yeah, we're definitely going to be tracking that. We're really looking for to monitor changes in first-time contribution. That was one of the big motivations behind this change, right? We want to lower that barrier to contribution to Drupal. You do still need a D.O account, but once you've got one and checked that box that accepts the Git terms of service, you can go in and use any of these merge request features. So hopefully we'll be seeing that. Certainly I've seen some promising chatter from a couple other open source projects who'd also been looking at or considering a transition to GitLab or other tooling. There's a lot of folks like us who've been on other tool sets. So, whether it's GNOME or KDE or a variety of other folks, they're all looking at the same thing. And some of them are looking to us to see if our example is working out.
So
I do still see some patches on a lot of issues. Is the intention to try to, obviously you can't remove patches because people can attach files and they could always apply those patches locally, but is the intention to start heavily discouraging that workflow at some point?
Yeah, we're thinking about this. Yeah, because there's a couple reasons why there are still patches sort of all over the place on Drupal.org in the issue queues. One is because there was already work in progress. So as we said before, we wanted to transition people to a new workflow by making these new tools available, but we didn't want to cause a 3-month gap in productivity when everyone was like, oh crap, I can't use my patches anymore. I have to learn the new thing. What's going on?
Yeah.
Why did you break my tools? So we've left all of the current tooling infrastructure in place for patches, including the automated testing on patches. And at least for the moment, we're going to allow them to exist in parallel so that people can finish out their current work and choose on their own time to, okay, with the next issue I open, I'm going to do that using the merge request workflow. Right now, we're not sure whether we need to actively discourage patches or not. We have to think about this and observe what the activity in the issue queues look like. It may just be that they fall off on their own and there's not much that we have to do. Or it may be that we might create a feature that takes a patch and converts it into a merge request on upload so that people can review it that way. That is a possible
that'd be pretty cool.
So, Tim, you're not advocating that everybody listening to this podcast go out and convert their patches into the new GitLab merge requests workflow, are you?
Well, maybe I am, because I think it would be it's a nice way to work. So I think you would enjoy it if you did take the time to convert it, but you don't have to. You're right. If you need to finish off if you've got some work in flight and you just, or for whatever reason, you kind of prefer that patch step, you can finish off what you're doing now that way. And then give it a try and move on when you're not focused on just finishing the work, right? We want, the end goal is we want the tools to support you in all of you out there in building Drupal and building extensions for Drupal. So, right. So the goal is never to block you on learning a new tool process, but I do encourage you to try it because I think you'll find it much easier, easier to find other collaborators to continue to help you out. And it's a great way to go.
Yeah, I say run, don't walk to the merge request architecture. Get rid of those patches, but that's just that's my 2 cents.
Yep.
Yeah, I think one thing I'm most excited about is hopefully this process allows us to remove those issues where it's just like it was created in 2011 and it's slated for 7 point whatever, and then moved to 8.0, then 8.1, then 8.2, and there's just 400 comments of just rerolls. Because, I think my assumption is that the merge process will just make it easier to just close a lot of that stuff out.
I hope so. There's an element to which there's always a human factor, and the most important factor is always the human factor. But what we want to do is, we have so many resources, so many human resources, as it were, that can participate in our community and that can do everything we need to do. And if we can reduce the busy work of having to download a patch, apply it locally, review it with local tools, and figure out all that, and turn it into, hey, it's like one click to look at a merge request in a robust code review system and do the whole thing in your browser. Hopefully that does mean, people can move more quickly. They can see that the merge has worked.
And the nitpick step becomes so much easier too. Like rather than just having to comment or do an interdiff, you can just be like, hey, these things, just propose your changes directly.
You can directly propose the changes and have them accepted with a button, right? Like it's really easy. And that also means hopefully you can have more collaboration between folks who are at like an intermediate contribution level and sort of the advanced folks. So you may have people in core, and the scope of the issue is one where it needs some of our very best experts in performance, perhaps, and it's very specific to their knowledge base. But instead of that really strong expert in performance also having to fix their code style stuff, someone else can come in and help with doc comments and code styles and all those.
I was going to say that it's like a 100x improvement to collaboration, right? To be able to say like, hey, you guys can work in line and on the same merge request and get that code into whatever you're updating. Yeah. So, obviously this is new for everybody, right? Yep. What is the best way to learn and I'm using air quotes here, new way of updating code?
Yeah, so we want to keep the process lightweight. So the point is, the most fundamental thing is, if you have used pull requests on GitHub, you can probably figure this out. I bet you could just click the buttons, seat of the pants, and you'd probably be fine. However, if you'd like a little bit more guardrails around things, there's a few resources out there that are helpful. There's a documentation section on Drupal.org in the contributor guide for using the merge request system. It includes a demo video that I'm sure we'll have in the show notes that just shows me walking through that process and has like little extra tips and tricks for different kinds of things that you might do. Like, for example, it's not uncommon for people to be applying patches to their sites, right? There are patches hosted in issue queues right now for a fix that hasn't made it into a release that people are still applying, right? So there's some suggestions in the documentation about how you can get a patch from a merge request, upload it somewhere sustainable, and then apply that if necessary. Although again, the hope is, since this is so much easier, we can actually see these things get rolled into more releases and not have to worry about that so much.
So, Tim, what is next?
Good question. Gosh, there's a lot that's coming next, but there's many different areas in which this is happening. So in particular, on the tooling side, there are a few things that we want to do to support what's the best way to put it? So if you've seen the Dries note from the last DrupalCon, you're aware of some of the core initiatives, and in particular, you're aware of the JS menu component initiative. And I know a lot of people out there who saw that were like, JavaScript menu component sounds like a real small thing to be a big full-sized Drupal core initiative. And that's because I think people don't fully grasp what that represents, right? The basic idea behind that initiative is, can we prove that we can have non-PHP Drupal components as first-class citizens of the Drupal ecosystem?
Right.
So whether it's JavaScript or whether it's something else in the future, whether there's like WebAssembly code or all sorts of things, can we make Drupal in some sense kind of a PHP agnostic project, because a lot of this JavaScript stuff is getting so becoming so important on the front end especially. And so part of what's next is understanding, okay, how does Drupal.org's tooling, how does the automated testing, how do the like project types that we have available need to evolve to accommodate these sort of non-PHP ecosystem components? How can we publish things to NPM? How can we do those sorts of stuff? So that's going to be a big part. And then also there are still sort of experimental projects out there that are like wondering, there's people who went to GitHub or to private GitLab instances and who aren't on D.O. And we want to understand, now that we've closed some of the tooling gaps, are they still missing things? Are there still reasons why that's needed, and understand more of how that works?
So an example of that would be Drupal Spoons, right? Has there been any discussions on rolling that back in, or do you think that will remain as it is?
I am not 100% sure. So I haven't had a discussion since our launch with Moshe, although I've certainly talked to him about the Drupal Spoons initiative on a couple occasions before. I think one of the powerful things about that initiative, right, is it shines a light on the friction in the Drupal contribution process. Wherever we have something that isn't working well, the initiatives or the projects that are using the Drupal Spoons method are showing like, look, this is the easy and better way to do that. So what we can do is we can say, oh, okay, we've eliminated the need for the pull requests side of things, but maybe there's something else. Maybe there's something in issue management. And so we need to talk with the people who've hosted their projects that way, talk to the Drupal Spoons folks, and understand if we've actually solved all the problems. We may not have, but I think we've made really good progress there.
So there's great value in some of those experiments and those avenues where people have gone outside of Drupal.org to see where the benefits are.
Absolutely. I mean, it's if nobody had done that at all, I don't know that we would ever have managed to get to GitLab and merge requests on Drupal.org, right? Like it pushes us to improve the tools we have and to understand where we're spinning our wheels in a way we don't need to, right? Like, again, we're trying to move away from that. We have to do everything ourselves in a Drupal specific way, and to let's take advantage of what others have done. So.
And if you're interested in learning more about Drupal Spoons, you can listen to episode 250. Link will be in the show notes for that. So, Tim, it seems like things are going pretty well with the project, and obviously issue forks, merge requests are a big a big feature of this. But overall, are you happy with how the project has gone?
I'm thrilled, to be honest, certainly to be where we are. I would love to have been able to do all this more quickly, but in the end, I think, particularly given that part of the process of making this happen has even involved going to the GitLab team and having them build API features for us that we needed, right? Like there was a hand-in-hand process there. So in many ways, it happened as quickly as it could. But on the other hand, I do just think it would have been wonderful to have these collaboration tools as soon as we could. That said, yeah, really thrilled to have them where they are, really thrilled to have that opportunity for folks new to our community to use them and experience them, and to just see, how this might change the nature of maintainership and contribution on projects moving forward. I think pulling contribution statistics in the next couple quarters and in the next year should be really interesting to understand that.
So you just mentioned that there was a a hand-in-hand relationship with GitLab, and that they worked on implementing some API changes for the Drupal community. Do you envision that relationship continuing as we progress and use GitLab more?
Absolutely, yeah. I think there's every reason to stay in close collaboration with them, whether it's on a feature basis, whether it's even on a sort of almost an open source advocacy basis. So again, I mentioned earlier that Drupal has been looked at by some other projects that are also evaluating the GitLab change, and some of them have gone on to do that, and we've shared back and forth. And even back at Drupalcon Seattle, even when we were in the early phase of this, we brought some of those people together and had a shared panel with some people from GitLab. So I think it's helpful for us to be close to this conversation because, well, to put it frankly, one of the reasons that a lot of big open source projects aren't on a place like GitHub is that workflow wasn't designed for projects of this kind of scale, and the big open source projects weren't close to understanding how that tooling works and to how collaboration should work at scale. And the closer we can stay, the more that we can make sure that as it continues to evolve, it remains a good fit and is a good fit for others as well.
So, a project of this size doesn't go without speed bumps. What were some of the biggest obstacles that you hit
Oh my
that you had
gosh.
to solve around?
There have been a bunch. This has not been a short-term project, so there have been thinking back over the years, there's been a number of different things. Some of you might remember, if you were following this especially closely and reading my blog series, for example, about the tooling evaluation, we were this close to going with a Bitbucket implementation as opposed to a GitLab implementation. There was, speaking of this hand-in-hand relationship, we ran into hard blockers with some feature issues, permissioning, and some API stuff that meant we didn't think we could use GitLab at first. Fortunately, Sid over there, the CEO, saw that and reached out to me personally. He'd been a member of Drupal.org for several years before that, and said, look, we want to fix these things because we think it'll be good for you, but we also think it'll be good for us, because if you need something, probably other open source projects or other other just enterprise users of their product probably need it. So that was one thing, was just doing that evaluation process. It took a long time to understand how we were going to avoid disrupting people. There was a lot of the community bike shedding. When you have something as big as, pulling the rug out from under folks with tools, you get everybody with an opinion on the right way to do it. And those are good. Like we have done better than we would have without those discussions, but they take a lot of time. Yeah, it can be tough.
Yeah, one of the people that I really look up to that talks about stuff like this is the audience is very good at identifying problems, but their solutions don't always take everything into account. So those discussions are good. You need to identify those problems and identify proper solutions.
And that brings up a really good point that applies to a lot of the work that the DA engineering team does. And I'm not sure people necessarily see this or are fully aware of this all the time. But oftentimes, regardless of the project, we might have a situation where we're working with one community stakeholder and they have a really strong opinion about, I don't know, about how the testing suite needs to work to support PHP 8 or something like that, right? They may have all this really, really awesome feedback. And like you said, they'll propose a set of solutions for the problems they identified. It's helpful, but we might spend sort of 3 months with that person. And then, somewhere in that process, there's this other stakeholder who has some other need, and it turns out to be incompatible with the proposed solution. It's not that a solution can't be found in the middle. It's just there's this other concern that this person, it's not even that they're not trying to address it, they're just not even aware of it. And oftentimes we're working together on this kind of stuff, and the position that the DA engineering team is in sometimes is just, sometimes we're kind of that sole party that gets to hear from all of those constituents and try and help put those puzzle pieces together. And that's sometimes that means we don't make any of them happy, because like we'll spend 6 months on this one and then this person's like, what have you been doing for that 6 months? But in the end, it usually results in a good improvement.
Well, I think I think the three of us are happy, and I firmly believe you can't make everybody happy all the time. So, you got three upvotes right here.
Awesome.
So something that something that the Talking Drupal team has been talking about recently is the credit system in Drupal, and we're well aware we could have a whole show on that topic alone. But I'm just curious if the move to GitLab helps improve the credit system in Drupal, or could potentially improve the credit system in Drupal down the road.
Gosh, it's a really good question. I think there are some things that could be done with the GitLab move that would be related to improving the credit system. But to be honest, right now, I think the bigger piece is we need a system of recording contributions that isn't solely reliant on the issue queue. The community's done great things by realizing that they could use the issue queue and community projects, non-code projects, as a way to adapt the credit system for non-code contributions. That's been awesome to see. So people will start a project for the Drupal Diversity and Inclusion group, for one. They started a project, they have an issue for each meeting that they hold, and they credit the attendees to the meeting that way. And it was a great way to adapt the system to work for the ways that they contribute to the project that aren't code related. But I do think that even unrelated to the GitLab change, our next major change to the credit system is likely going to be around the different kinds of contribution roles and creating a low friction way to indicate contribution, to say, I'm a Drupalcon volunteer, I'm a speaker, I run a Drupal camp, all those things. I'm a board member, I was one of the community elected seats, and have all those things also factor into the credit system. So that's, I think, what we're trying to do.
It's funny you should mention that, as Stephen, Nick, and I have over the last week been feverishly entering episodes into the Drupal.org issue queue.
Excellent.
Talking Drupal, you now get credit for appearing on Talking Drupal on Drupal.org. Awesome. So, I think that's pretty great, and the feedback we've gotten has been positive. So,
that's really
Tim,
cool.
I think you have a few new credits in your account, by the way.
Excellent.
Yeah, you should. This is a bit of a side note, but when I was adding you to some of those shows, I noticed that there's a Hestenet, for our listeners. Tim's username on Drupal.org is Hestenet. Am I saying that correctly?
Yep.
I noticed that there's a 10-month-old user, Hestenet test123.
Yes. There's a few.
I'm curious. I'm just so curious what you were testing that you created that user. I don't know how many users I have like that.
I'm not sure, and why I have one on production instead of just our staging environment. I'm sure there was a good reason. I actually have at least 2, maybe 3 sort of test Smurf accounts on Drupal.org. One of them is Hestenitis. I do have ringing in one ear. Hestenitis, and a couple test accounts. Most likely it was because I wanted to see some aspect of our website with a different permissions config than the full admin stuff to verify a user report. And because D.O is also behind a CDM thing, I wanted to do it on the production side. But yeah, that's usually where we wind up with some. I
figured it was something like that.
Nick, was that the only one, or was there like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? I know exactly what Tim's doing after this podcast.
Yep.
I just found the test 1, 2, 3 and the Hestenite. I almost credited Hestenite a couple of times when I was doing that. Oh, that's a feature request. One of the things I noticed when we were adding these, if you're adding other users not using the checkbox, when somebody, this is just a Drupal thing though, when the entity gets added, it defocuses the field. So you can't just I can't add John and then add you and then add somebody else. I have to add you, John.
When you do the autocomplete field thing, and then do, yes, that is a good point. I am not sure We can probably hack around that. I imagine that's a D7 core behavior that we'll have to kind of hack around. But
it also is very case sensitive.
Yes, the username autocomplete is super case sensitive. There was a time period where, I don't think this is true anymore, where you could actually, like, we could have uppercase Dries and lowercase Dries, for example, and that kind of thing. And so that
I actually had a lot of trouble finding Dries for the couple of episodes that had Adam, because there are so many Dries on the website.
Yep.
You had to find the real Dries, right?
Yep.
I needed the capital. If I didn't have the capital, he wasn't in the list of 10 that showed up.
Yeah.
Yep.
So Tim, at the beginning of the show, we mentioned that the Drupal Association engineering team is beginning this initiative to guide new organizations into becoming contributors. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so this is another thing that's kind of coming next and is hopefully going to be a major focus in 2021. And really, it's a focus across the organization, but the engineering team has a particular role to play. With tooling modernized and with other things going on, and with the knowledge that something like 68, 69% of Drupal contributions are sponsored by somebody's employer, right? We know that from the contribution data from Dries' yearly blog posts and from the data that we've collected as the contribution credit system. We want to lower the barrier for organizational contributors to give back, right? Some of the most important initiatives in Drupal's history have been gotten across the finish line by an organization that had a stake in that idea. Like Workflows Initiative was one along those. There's been a bunch over the years where it's like some organization says, gosh, we're going to dedicate some of our team to trying to get this Drupal initiative over the line. Even a lot of the work to make Drupal 7 itself happen was done in that way by sort of the news media industry. But as everybody knows, like that process of how do you actually just start? And in particular, how do you contribute at an initiative level, not just at a like individual issue level, is pretty opaque. It's not obvious like what the official initiatives are and who's leading and what's open for someone to just come in and get involved. And so we want to figure out how to work with existing initiative coordinators and everyone to say, okay, look, here's an understandable way to find an initiative that needs your help, to learn what needs to go into it, and to get involved and have your contributions make an impact and not sit there for 3 Drupal versions because no one's able to review them, right?
So because this is an engineering team initiative, it sounds like you're going to have some new entities that are initiative, like when you go to an issue queue or a project, or is a project going to be an initiative? Is that where you're heading with this?
There's some of this that's probably going to happen. So there's actually a new feature in the community section. So drupal.org/community/contributor-guide. And this new feature is still under construction, but already useful. And it basically is right now, it's the seed of this bigger idea. It has multiple sort of sub-content types for what role you might be able to fill, what tasks might be available, what skills you might have, different kinds of things like that. And kind of the rough idea is that we could say, okay, well, this task in the Drupal community, which might be attached to an initiative or attached to an issue or something like that, requires someone of this role. So it needs a project manager, it needs a product owner, or requires people with the skills. It needs React experience, it needs whatever. And we can have these sort of profile of attributes on an initiative. And then we can also let individuals or even organizations specify, we have these roles available to contribute, or we have these skills on our team.
Interesting.
And try and automatically match people to say, look, your skills are a great fit for this initiative that really needs someone who can do X, Y, or Z. So we're going to try that out. And as I alluded to a little bit earlier, the human side of things is going to be just as important as the technology. Technology is never a solution for everything, especially when it comes to contribution, collaboration, and community.
Right.
But we can make more tools to I think, make that easier.
Easier, right? Lower the barrier again. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Tim, as we wrap up here, is there anything that you wanted to mention that we did not cover today?
I just want to shout out that Drupalcon Europe is happening. It's all virtual. It's in just more like a week and a half than 2 weeks, actually, at this
Right,
point.
yeah.
It's December 8th to 11th. Tickets are still available. They're reasonable. There's going to be contribution days. It's going to be a great way to engage with the community. If you've never been able to attend a European con, it might be a nice chance to be able to meet some of that community more closely in a virtual setting. So strongly encourage folks to take a look and hopefully join us.
And if you have questions or feedback, you can reach out to us on Twitter at Talking Drupal. You can hit us up in the Talking Drupal Slack channel on the Drupal Slack, or you can email us at show@talkingdrupal.com. You can also get show updates by signing up for our newsletter at talkingdrupal.com/newsletter.
And we'd also like to take a moment to thank our patrons for supporting Talking Drupal. Your support is greatly appreciated. You can learn more about becoming a patron at talkingdrupal.com and clicking the Become a Patron button. And our patrons get a little pre-show and post-show. They get a private feed with the raw, uncut podcast.
Sorry about that. So Tim, anyone who wants to contact you, reach out to you, how would they do that?
Yeah, you can find my contact form on my user profile. That's drupal.org/u/hestenet. Or I'm on the Drupal Association staff page. You can also email me directly at tim@association.drupal.org.
Also makes me wonder how many people have contacted Hestenet-test123. Like, why doesn't Tim
Not
get
too
back
many.
to me?
I still get those alerts.
Okay.
So John, how can people reach you?
You can find me on all the major social networks and Drupal.org at John Picozzi. And you can find me at johnpicozzi.com. And you can find out about Oomph at oomphinc.com.
And you, Nick.
And you can reach me pretty much everywhere at Nixman, NICXVAN.
And I'm Stephen Cross. You can reach me at stephencross.com. And if you've enjoyed listening, we've enjoyed talking. Thanks, guys.
Awesome.
Thank
That was
you.
great.
Thanks.
Have a good one.
Thanks, sweet.